Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone in between, I am OverHugs, and I'd like to welcome you back to Building Bread. Thanks for joining us on the adventure today. Today we started off on the blimp that we created last episode, and this has been working quite well with its concrete maker sitting inside, where we've built a lot of what we needed for the next couple of episodes. But I went through and I started making a list because I'm planning exactly what we're going to do in the episode next after this one, and that is going to be to create the area down here with our storage. It is time. We have been dealing with chest monsters for long enough. They're expanding everywhere. We have a chest monster in here. We have a chest monster over here. We have a chest monster over here. They are everywhere, and it's time to get them all under control. And so I did some quick calculations and realized that I'm going to need about 500 chests. Not joking, 500 chests. So to do that, I think we need to make a wood farm first, because I, for one, am not interested in going through and knocking down all of these trees, especially not by hand. So at its very simplest, you could set up a wood farm like this that we've done. Spruce trees, when you grow them in a foursquare, will end up making this giant, tall super tree that is very efficient to grow and cut down. Each one of these gets about a stack and change worth of wood, which is not bad. It's fairly efficient when it comes to the amount of time that you put into it. But we're going to need more than that, because I don't want to have to knock all these down and then plant them and then wait for the trees to grow again. So let's go over the basics of what a wood farm actually does and looks like. All right, and here we are with a very basic tree farm. Basically, the way that this works is that we have a number of sticky pistons here that each have a log. Because if you have another material here, the game will check and see if there is anything else before it tries to grow a tree. So if we were to replace this with stone, the tree would not grow. What we have is a dispenser here full of bone meal and a comparator. When there's a solid block here, the comparator will detect the signal from the dispenser, which will activate this and fire all these pistons at once. The bottom one is glass, because glass is an opaque block and it won't transmit the signal, which will cause it so that then the pistons will retract. And we can go through and see how this works simply by flicking this piston, which activates this observer clock, and will start trying to dispense bone meal. Now, if you note, it won't use any, because you can't actually use bone meal when there's not something to use it on. But if we go through and we place down a sapling, you see a tree grows. And we can just keep doing this and sit here and allow this to go through and grow until it hits the maximum piston push length of 12, which will give us 11 different trees that will have grown. And we're just about there now, so you'll see now it does not move. And now we've hit the maximum length, but we have a wall of wood that we can use. And this is pretty simple. The advantage of this as well is you can come with a hoe that has fortune on it and get most of your saplings back just by knocking down all the leaves. This is something that only takes a couple minutes to build. It doesn't use a huge amount of bone meal, and it's largely self-sufficient. So this is a lot faster than trying to grow a bunch of trees, especially if you have a tree that does not have the huge version like these do. It's going to end up being about as efficient as the double tall tree by the time that we get into this. And you can see now that's retracted. So let's knock all this down and see how much we get. Much like the spruce, we get about a stack and a half. Now, the advantage that we could do with this is we could very easily build ourselves a TNT duplicator over here and a very simple water collection system. And then that would make this almost totally automated. You would need to have a supply of saplings, but as long as you had enough saplings, you could go through and grow trees indefinitely. There are other farms out there that are completely self-sufficient. Ilmango has a really good tree farm because, quite frankly, he's got a farm for everything, so why wouldn't he have a tree farm? Now, we're going to do something a little different today, because I want to make a nether tree farm instead of building a regular tree farm. Basically, in the next couple of building projects, I wanted to use a lot of the Nether ones, and I hadn't seen a really good Nether wood farm. I'm sure there is one, I just haven't seen it. So I went through in Creative and designed one using basically this same concept. There's a few different gotchas that you have to worry about whenever you're making a Nether tree version of this, but rather than me explaining it, why don't we take our super speed potion and get into a time lapse. And we're at our moment of truth here. I think this is built properly, but the only way really to know, since the TNT duplicators do kind of take a life of their own until you run them for the first time, the only thing we can do is flip on the machine and see what happens. So I think we'll go and sleep in order to put this off as long as possible, because I, for one, don't want to rebuild this. I'd really rather not. Alright, there's really no way to do this other than to turn it on and see what happens. So let's come down here, flip the switch. Do we get TNT? Do we? We do! Oh, it works! It works! Oh, that's fantastic. I'm always the most nervous about playing around with TNT duplication because it's very easy to get it wrong. Alright, so now the second test. Can we grow fungus? We can! Can we grow more fungus? We have a working farm. Oh, this is awesome. This is fantastic. I am so happy. I was not expecting that to work the first time. I'm just so happy. I did not expect that to work the first time at all. I figured this was going to be a gigantic explosion and then I'd have to rebuild that entire section up there. So, yay! Happy hugs! So there's two problems with this farm. First and foremost, it is going to rip through bone meal. We've got right here, this dispenser is completely full, and then we have these 3 hoppers and a double chest and another double chest with it leading into here. So what we can do is we can take these bone blocks that we ran out and got from our farm, our general mob farm, and just start filling up this chest. This should provide enough for them to run for a while, but if you're ever going to run this like longer than potentially overnight, you may want to build up your storage system even more than that. It's up to you how many trees that you really need, because this will produce fairly quickly. It's not the most efficient, fastest farm ever, but it's more than enough where a single player world, it'll provide what you need unless you're doing a massive, massive tree project. I'm looking at you, Iskal. The second problem that we have is coming up with enough mushrooms to feed this. Like, it should be pretty productive. As you can see, there's a lot of things that are produced, both from a stem and from the wart perspective, as well as the occasional shroomlight. But every single tree we grow takes an additional mushrooms, and we saw how quickly we ripped through 25 or so of them. So in order to combat that, we need a way that we can reliably get mushrooms. And I bet you know what's coming next, because, yeah, I might have a plan for that too. This will be a quick time lapse, though. So maybe we only need a speed potion rather than a super speed potion. And now we're done. Let's go over and check this farm out start to finish. What happens in the first stage here is these are bone mealing, the sections of both the Crimson and the Twisted section of the Nether. So these are the netherrack that you see in Crimson Forest, and that is the section you see in the Warped Forests. So by bone mealing them, we're getting all the things that you would normally get on those blocks. So you see the mushrooms and the roots and everything that goes through. And this is just done by a simple repeater clock and a simple observer clock. We are wasting a little bit of bone meal by having it be the observer clock, but bone meal's not in short supply right now, so I don't really care to spend the time to make that more efficient. So when it goes through here on either side, it goes into these hoppers, and we've just placed composters on top again to reduce lag. It drops right now all into one chest, and this is the kind of outcome we should expect from seeing this farm. This one's a little optimized because I recycled some of the roots that we got and put them in the composters over there, but the one over here is much more accurate as to what you would get. So you see you get a lot of roots and still a decent amount of mushrooms. The nice thing is that this, even though we're kind of wasting bone meal, it really doesn't burn as much as you'd think because we can take all these roots and recycle them and get more bone meal. So what we could just do is just take a whole stack and go and run them over here, or create their own composter, or even make it so that it's wholly automatic, so that it goes through and then it just recycles the bone meal back into the system itself. And I might do that later, but I don't want to take care of it now. Coming up here to the storage system, standard item filter, almost every farm has it. I'm not going to go over it. But you can see from running this for probably about 10 stacks of mushrooms, we have a reasonable amount of shroomlights. They're relatively rare, and almost a double chest full of warped stem. We as well got a whole bunch of these warped blocks, but I've just straight out composted them to put them back into the system. And I've taken it out a couple of times, so it's more than that. So let's now go over here and we can show the farm itself and explain how it works. So coming up this bubble vader, we come up these stairs to the area that you've already seen, and I went through and decorated and explained it a bit more for the eventual world download that's going to be coming. I haven't decided yet. Maybe episode 50, maybe episode 100. So over here, when you activate this lever, it will raise the slime tower and activate the block that will connect it to the repeater clock, which will cause the TNT duplicators to start spitting out TNT. At that same time, it activates this observer clock, which will start spewing out bone meal again as fast as it can, and you can just stand here and plant mushrooms. We also have a dispenser right here that will continue to spit out the mushrooms. For every single one that you plant, it will give you another one. So you will have an indefinite inventory as long as this is full, and there are additional hoppers if you want more. The bone meal goes in these two chests up here, and they're both full, as you can see. So we've just gone through and made it so that this won't run out anytime soon. Every single time that a stem block appears here, the signal travels through and is detected by the comparator, like we did with our simple farm over there, which causes all the pistons to fire. And you can see that if we flip this switch. That will fire all the pistons and push the entire wall forward. We are specifically deciding not to go all the way to the top. The mushrooms do grow very, very tall. I believe it's 24 blocks that they will grow. There are a bit of diminishing returns, and again, this farm's not 100% efficient. If you want that, like I said, Ilmango's got you covered. So let's come up here and check out the TNT duplicators, and that's the last part of the farm here. So this is a normal repeater clock that we just have. It's just activated by flipping the lever really fast, and then things just go around. And I've adjusted the repeater timings to be about as efficient as we can be. When we flip the lever of the slime tower here, it will move the block, the redstone block, off of this redstone wire, which will take the torch down here and allow it to activate, which fires up the sticky piston, which moves the target block up. And that allows the redstone signal to go. So this is how we can have our timing without having to worry about activating and deactivating a clock, which is not as easy. So once this goes through and is activated, it will send a signal to this sticky piston, which will fire the TNT duplicator. At the same time, a signal goes back here down this staircase and goes to this repeater line. And what this does is this delays a fence gate that's down there long enough where it will hold the TNT so that when it does finally open and falls, it explodes exactly where we want it. So think of this as the equivalent of a TNT fuse. We're basically just setting the fuse so that it explodes mid-air rather than going all the way down to the water. And that's how the whole farm works. It looks a lot more complicated than it is, and this one is my design. This is something that I did build in a creative world and just basically went through and did it. By no means is it unique. Like, moving things via pistons has happened since trees farms have existed, but this is not something that I took from somebody else because I wanted the exercise and I thought it would be fun. And finally, I wanted to show you how you can switch over this farm to collect crimson rather than warped. If you take out these two pieces of warped nylium, using a silk touch tool, of course, so that we can preserve and put them back later, you can replace them with crimson. And once they are replaced, this will allow you to grow the crimson mushrooms instead. So we can just continue to plant the crimson as opposed to the warped, and it will continue just as normal. So this farm enables us to grow both types of mushrooms in the same exact farm. And with that, we're going to call it an episode today. Once again, I wanted to thank you for choosing to spend your time on the adventure with me. I am OverHugs, and this has been Building Bread. As a reminder, I donate all the profits I make off of this to local food banks. So if you've enjoyed or otherwise gotten something valuable out of this today, I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, or tell a friend. Together, we can help people that are in need. I hope you have the most wonderful of days, and I'll see you soon.